Good morning, everybody. This is our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee meeting. This is our, of course, June 14th meeting, and we have three very important items to discuss. So I welcome everyone. The first item is one that we had already discussed briefly, but we did say we were going to come back. And I think it's very appropriate given the stage in which we find ourselves with, I would say the light at the end of the tunnel is a lot brighter now in terms of post-COVID-19 pandemic. We're still working on reopening and strategies, as well as evaluating what are some of those lessons that we've learned along the way and how can we improve. And so the issue of access to broadband was, of course, front and center, given that everything had to shift and migrate so quickly. And so we wanted to have a bit of a deeper conversation and also understand how state and federal funds can help us further our goals. Of course, of top of mind is the issue of the digital divide, which I know this council, this committee in particular, has been discussing for quite a while. So it would be really useful to understand how these resources are going to be targeted, and also the issue of our rural areas, which was another piece that came forward with our agricultural reserve folks as well. So I think it is a very robust packet, of course, that Dr. Torregas always prepares. And of course, we have the director of the Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions. We have Ms. Gail Roper, and I believe Ms. Kathleen Boucher from the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, and Allison Dollar, who is the Chief Budget Officer for the Department of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions. I have to get used to saying that name now. I'm gonna have to get used to some kind of abbreviation. TEBS. TEBS sounds really good. So with that, let me just highlight that for my colleagues and everyone who may be listening, that Dr. Torregas did prepare, I think, a pretty strategic packet, but there are 4 questions which I think are important to guide this discussion. Number 1 is just basically what are the explicit mechanisms that exist or will be developed to ensure that new broadband resources will indeed impact the most needy. And so this goes to the conversation of equity all around, knowing that, again, I think we have learned so much during this pandemic in terms of the role the broadband plays just for simple survival and continuing to work and continue to study. I mean, it's really important, but we know that not having access to affordable broadband services has had an impact for sure that may have exacerbated many of the gaps that already existed. So that's an important, I think, question to ponder. Also, will the federal and state funds require additional management resources to execute broadband programs, or are such funds already included in the approved FY22 TEBS budget? And of course, this goes to the conversation and the point of sustainability, which is really critical. Also, number 3, is there a role for existing internet service providers, ISPs, in this effort to target the digital divide? This committee did hear from industry regarding their programs, but we want to know if there's a chance to create public-private partnerships to accomplish more with market forces, more than what market forces can allow. And number 4, will some of the federal state funds allow for an offsetting reduction of tax-supported expenditures in the FY22 budget and in FY23? And that just goes to the conversations that we have here all the time about budget sustainability and how do we leverage any funds that come forward as well. So these, I think, are really important themes or questions, I guess, that we can, when we hear from all of you, we can talk about. And I see also Ms. Mitzi Herrera has joined us as well. So let me turn it over to Dr. Torregas, unless my colleagues have any introductory remarks that they want to make. Councilmember Katz.
Yes, and thank you very much. And those remarks are certainly, I want to associate with every one of them. But one of the other things that I thought about, and while people are discussing it, I was wondering whether there's any way that we could tie in this topic with solar, and especially in the Ag Reserve. If any of the carriers could come up with a way that we could put some some solar energy on towers that they would put up or on rooftops or whatever. If there's a possibility whether or not we could combine any of this, especially for the ag reserve, I think we should look into that. So any brainstorming on that, I'd appreciate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll add that to the list. Okay. Not seeing Councilmember Feetson's raising his hand or anything. Let's get right into the conversation. So Dr. Torregas, I'm going to turn it to you so that you can facilitate the conversation.
Thanks very much, Councilmember Navarro. You're right. Back on April 5th, you heard from Ms. Boucher in terms of the programs that the Office of Intergovernmental Relations was pursuing in Annapolis. And of course, our county is always looking at the federal government, the Federal Communications Commission, thanks to the good work of Ms. Roper and Ms. Herrera in that space. So you thought it would be a good idea to have a briefing. No decisions are going to be made here, but perhaps some brainstorming, as Councilmember Katz suggests. So what I would suggest is to turn it over to Ms. Roper to give us an overview of the federal and state programs. And it may be, Kathleen, that you might want to precede that with any updates you have from Annapolis in terms of financial flows, but the key questions you've already outlined. So let's get to it.
So I would start, I'm going to turn it over to Mitzi, but I would start by saying that we're still somewhat in the discovery phase in terms of the specificity of these funds, what they can and can't be used for. And believe me, they're very complex. We're also looking at alignment with our initiatives and what we feel like we can do to benefit the community. We've been working with OIR, engaging other federal and state agencies to learn more. So the way, kind of the way these grants happen, of course, they announce them and then they begin to divulge the specificity of what they can be used for. So we're still kind of circling the wagon in terms of understanding rules and making certain that we don't spend a lot of time going after funding that we're either not eligible for or doesn't suit what we're trying to get done. Mitzi has been, Mrs. Herrera has been very much responsible for communications and working with OIR, and then also working with other local agencies to find out just exactly, excuse my grandkids are cleaning, I got them cleaning today, but to better understand how we can target these funds. So Mitzi, you want to talk about our efforts in the last several months?
Sure. I just want to point out Gail's tremendous management skills there. Okay. So in the packet itself on there's the charts that begin on circle 3 rather. Those are really giving you more details about all of the specific programs. There are a lot of moving parts to it, some of which we have some initial guidance, and other parts we are either lobbying to impact those rules or we're waiting for those rules to be laid out. To Ms. Navarro, the neediest is #1 priority. For some of these programs, for example, the FCC is giving a $50 internet subsidy that is available to low-income households. And what we're actually working there with the state is to find out how the low-income households that don't qualify under the federal rules could be eligible for the state funding. We've also, you can see on beginning at circle 8, we provided specific information. We've been addressing to understand where are the folks that don't have broadband, don't have computers. Our estimate, we had the Able Foundation put out a report. They are based in Baltimore, and I think that it was sort of a proactive move on their part to say to the state of Maryland, when you're looking at spending funds, it's not just rural. There are a lot of urban low-income folks, And in fact, if you look at Maryland statewide, based on the information in that report, 54% of the households without home wireline broadband are in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's, and Montgomery County. And for that reason, we are working with Kathleen and Melanie and Sarah in the Office of Intergovernmental Relations to reach out to our counterparts in those other counties, lobby collectively to ensure that more of that funding goes to the urban areas. And so the state has said that there's 166 million that will go to rural areas. And we want to make sure that the remainder, which they've allocated in different buckets, and those are listed on that chart, that a good chunk of that is spent here. What we'd also are trying to do is to leverage the existing programs that we have so that those can be models or potentially could be an initial pilot to get things out quickly. We are firmly moving forward with a concept that digital equity is a three-legged stool. So you've got to have internet access, you've got to have a device, and you have to have training. And we may try to target it in some of our device distribution that you have to take the training or demonstrate you know how to use it so that it's really effective. And it's an issue of, we've had very good success in Senior Planet Montgomery program that people at the end of it feel confident about what they're doing. And Councilmember Katz is going to be speaking at the end of the month at our graduation that we've had for offering the courses in Mandarin. We continue to offer the courses in Spanish and in English. And the other ways that we're looking finally is with our program to look at providing broadband in affordable housing. We're looking at finding ways we've collected preliminary data and we're looking at prioritizing that list. At the present time, we still estimate it's about an $18 million issue, of which there's $500,000 in the current budget. And that's our goal, is to get a good chunk of that further between these various pots of money. And we've done analysis on those areas. We are working also with Park and Planning on the equity emphasis map and aligning some of the data that we have on digital equity. And we hope to roll that out and have more visuals that are available. Lastly, on the ag reserve area, since we've launched the broadband, since we released the rural broadband report and we did the studies of that, we have moved from 327 unserved properties down to what we think are 85 occupied properties. We want to do a bit of a social media push for people to help us verify that data. If we don't have you on your list, let us know so we add you to the list. If you're on the list, that you've already got service, somehow you've taken care of it, we want to know that, and we will make a push in that area. There are some thoughts about solar. It's a little more complicated, and I think we can get back to you on that issue.
All right.
Could I ask Mitzi to amplify a little bit on the underserved or the racial divide? You showed some excellent maps of the ag reserve where you can actually visually see what the unserved residences are. Do you have equivalent maps, Mitzi, for those points across the county where there are underprivileged residents who do not have access to broadband, or is it something that you do as the grants come? In other words, do you know where they are?
We do have that information based on census data. There's a filter system that allows you to pick certain features, and I wanted to confirm a few pieces of that, which is why I didn't include that data in this map. But if you look on Circle 8 in the packet, there you will see the summary of the analysis that we've done. What we've done is we've done it down to the census block group, which is kind of the middle ground between tracts and blocks. And there you can see, so we've also gone through, and I will say our GIS team has helped it. We've also had and a volunteer who came through us through the agriculture office, Surya, who has been great at just analyzing the data. And we have one of the council fellows, Madison Holland, is on, and she's going to be helping with organizing several of these events as well. But on this particular mapping, you can see there, one is that when we analyzed across the county for these income areas, the census at the time, the data that we had that matched up with the ABLE Foundation was at the PUMA, which is the public use microdata area. There are 7 of these in the county. And there you can see that where we have, so the first chart is showing you that here's the baseline income of homes with income less than 50,000 who don't have broadband and don't have a computer. And you can see that as a percentage, it's about 36% of those households don't have home broadband and 27 don't have a computer. Below that, you can see that, however, those percentages are higher in the Wheaton, Glenmont area, in the East County, and also Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. So in terms of targeting sign-up events that we're looking to organize in person, we're working with HHS to see about potentially having people also sign up for SNAP benefits. Because one thing is, if you're in a SNAP program, you will be eligible for the federal broadband program. We're also looking to find out whether we can target people who are looking for rental relief. And a big leap for us would also be looking to see Giroux in the East County, director of the Regional Services Center. He organized an event where they did a vaccination at an apartment building. And then they came back 3 weeks later, they gave a second shot, and that might be another option. Regarding the ISPs, T-Mobile has been very engaged with us. Comcast and Verizon and RCN have also. A big challenge for us is to get more data so that we can see in terms of the signups. We haven't been able to get that yet to find out, other than if we're signing people up. We're also using 311. We've reached out to other departments to help us provide live answers to questions to people in Spanish. And then below in the second chart, you'll see that is the breakout by race. These are households that identify as being African American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian. And what you can see there basically is that the percentage of families without home broadband is twice the rate for Black and Latino families as it is for white and Asian families. So working with, we reached out, HHS has the consolidated service hubs. We're reaching out to the liaisons with faith-based organizations. We have some churches and folks that have been engaged with us. So that's going to be an area that we're focusing on, as well as just looking through the other census data and events that we may be having, targeting in areas where you just have a large percentage of population that falls within those groups. And those are big strategies for us.
Mitch, let me add to that. Mrs. Navarro mentioned earlier the whole idea of public-private partnerships, and you all know that I feel that we can do more, and that we really should target. So we have a meeting, I believe it's today, with one of our technology providers, Microsoft, who has done quite a bit of digital programming in Baltimore and nationally. On some digital programming. So we don't want to leave any stone unturned in regard to being able to, like, boys code, girls code programs, community-based programs, programs at the HBCUs. So we're talking with them. They have brought to us quite a list of programming that they've done nationally, some that have gotten a lot of attention because they have been very effective. So we're going to be talking to them about doing some of that in Montgomery County as well. So not only the providers, not only Verizon, Comcast, but also we want to find other avenues for bringing the type of programming and funding that we need. So this would be all funded by the corporation.
Thank you. I only have one more question to suggest, Ms. Navarro, and then I'm done. And that is perhaps Ms. Dollar might comment on whether there are any substitution possibilities, as you mentioned in your questions that opened the session, In other words, as we receive these grants, could we offload some of the tax-supported revenues that are currently funding the TEBS elements of that budget, or is it additional that would permit TEBS to do additional work?
Yeah, let's hold off on that for a second, because I want to stay for a minute on the issue of the targeting. Only to say that, you know, there's no doubt that the main thing, at least one of my main takeaways from the pandemic, was this notion that as we were going through this process of mitigating the impact as much as possible and began to receive data about, you know, who was being mostly impacted, obviously we knew this already, but obviously the data showed what we expected, unfortunately, which was that, yes, there are certain areas of the county where those particular zip codes remain the highest, to 0902, to 0904, to 0906. I mean, it was just, you know, this constant kind of race to address the issues of the case numbers, positivity rate, and things of that nature, and mortality rates, which for our Black community was higher, and the case rates, positivity rates were higher for the Latino community. No doubt that also tracks the same when it comes to what MCPS has been experiencing. We know that as well, which was that a lot of the students in those particular areas of the county were having a lot more difficulty, many of them because of this issue of access to the internet and affordability and things like that. And then, of course, when we look at this particular chart that Ms. Herrera was talking about on Circle 8, when we look at those particular areas that are more acutely impacted, the east central part of the county, the East County and Southeast, it's layer upon layer in terms of mapping is the same. So to me, that just says that we have a very clear roadmap of where we need to focus. And as it was mentioned, luckily, we also have a lot of really important initiatives going on that can help facilitate that, you know, and so everything from, of course, I think it's going to be important to connect with the school system to find ways to do that outreach and engagement. You mentioned the hubs, Mitzi. I think they've done an extraordinary job and they're continuing to do activities. That needs to be like right away a priority. You also mentioned Jerry Bande, who I think single-handedly has done so much in the East County to build the capacity in the East County for community connectivity in terms of just, you know, folks knowing how to access services and get them. I think that would be a really important connection. Obviously, the Mid-County Regional Services Center is also reflected here because of Wheaton, Aspen Hill, Glenmont. So I do think that we already have those nice touch points. And so getting together, of course, with the office community partnerships, with the hubs, folks, you know, getting together with the regional services centers, making sure that those community-based organizations are already so active are helping out. I really want to make sure that we do that. And so I would love, you know, it doesn't have to be another session, but maybe like a memo at some point, if you could share just, you know, the activity kind of like timeline and then the different ways that you are doing this. It should not be a problem at all, I don't think. If there's any silver lining because of this pandemic, I think it's the fact that folks have really gone very grassroots, much deeper into communities where maybe before they were not as present. And so now we do have, I think, a lot more engagement going on, which now helps us make sure that we do all of this. So I think working, you know, with different departments like HHS, recreation, and ensuring that, hey, here is somebody who is going to these activities, making sure the folks know, sign up. If this is a challenge, please come forward. It should not be a problem, right? I don't think. And so targeting those zip codes and those areas, I think would be the way to go. Because if they're the most acute,
right,
then, you know, that's where we have to kind of start. So if we could get a memo at some point, that would be really useful.
I also think that, our goal was to make sure we really feel strongly that it's access in the home that has the most impact, especially for college students and young people. So, that was our first focal area, was to, take further than having access in community spaces, but to have access actually inside of the home.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I was referring to the fact that as you're trying to outreach and engage to make sure people know that these programs exist,
yes,
that as they're going out to, seek services, or as they're just going about, participating in activities, that those are optimal opportunities to make sure that they also learn about these particular programs, these particular, initiatives, and then to say, hey, if you need help, whatever, applying or, et cetera, we can find a way to do that. So it's just another way of leveraging what we put in place to just spread that word, especially, like I said, in these areas. And, and it's going to be important to assign some folks to do that, almost like we can call them broadband promoters or something like that, so that they can partner and do all this kind of thing. So
I would just say that we echo that, and that is the strategy we are pursuing. We had a kickoff in early May, just before the launch of the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. We had about 45 different groups. Recreation, Robin Riley, very much on board. Very good participation from CEC, HHS, Odile, Brunetto, and Pazit, and the whole team. Sean and Lily have been fantastic. We had our new fellow start last week. So one thing she's tasked with is we're looking to set up somewhere between 5 and 10 in-person events. We're also coordinating with a group called Connected DMV, which is kind of helping on the back end with the organizational structure. We are reaching out right now specifically to partner with the people who are doing the food distribution resources, people who are focused on doing the outreach specifically to the Spanish-speaking community, to folks in the East County and in the other areas, as well as the rental relief programs. We are absolutely taking the view that there's no need to reinvent this. We have created on the county website /digital equity. There's materials that we have for the EBB. We've created things that people can put into newsletters, things that they can put out over their social distribution. We're really trying to navigate the WhatsApp texting, which is a big way of promoting information among particularly folks working in the Latino community and other immigrant communities is sort of the go-to. We're also working to look at launching a kind of short survey about who has broadband now that's text-based, and working with those organizations. They have fantastic distribution lists through texting. So that is definitely our strategy. I'd also point out that we're leveraging our existing relationship because, as you said, we sort of knew it and we focused our efforts there, and the data that's coming now is essentially validating that work, and it's good to have statistically, but we didn't wait for that. So when we looked at Senior Planet Montgomery courses, offering them at the East County Regional Center, offering them with the Gilchrist Center, Josephine has been fantastic. We're looking forward to working with Julian now. We actually have launched with them a course that was in, it's like how to use Zoom, and it was intended so that if you want to use any of these other county services that they're offering over Zoom, really to like help people address that. We have offered courses in the past at the Burtonsville Library prior to its renovation, and we're looking to get back in there. We've offered it at the East County Services Center, and the Long Branch Community Center, the work with the senior centers and also their meal distribution program. That's been an area that we've been doing. And now it's just a matter of we have a lot of people who are interested in working on it. And so what we're trying to do is to get, specific action items, like send this out this week, push for people. We're also looking at how we can do it with some of these food distribution sites. What we're thinking you do is you put a flyer in there saying how you can do it, but if you want help, come back in 2 weeks. And then the week before you say, come back next week. And then the day of, you've got folks that are there to help do that. And then we've also got We transitioned and have in our office in community technology. They are our complaint and cable and broadband help desk is answering questions for people about the EBB. If there's anything complicated, we're sort of bringing those back channel to the FCC, and we're looking at probably doing some kind of filing, asking them like, hey, can you address some of these things? One of the things that we found out, and we need to find out if that's still correct, is the SNAP database in Maryland doesn't link to the federal database. And so we're pushing at the state level to figure out, well, how do you get that together? Because there are 28, there's like 36,000 families in Montgomery County that our HHS office has some engagement with because they're in the SNAP program. And all those families are eligible for EBB. So we're really trying to leverage, we're trying to get 10,000 families signed up to get internet and 10,000 devices. And the way for us to do that is we already know who a lot of these families are and finding ways that we connect with them. And that's our kind of first focus. And then targeting our kind of other outreach events that are really at the areas where we're going to have the most low income folks in those groups, in those areas coming to us.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you mentioned the target number, because that was going to be my next question. The only other thing I would suggest, of course, is because we do have so many nonprofit partners, especially a lot of them that receive county funding. It would be great if we could also engage with them and just say, if you indeed serve clients in these particular areas of the county, particular zip codes, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach this goal. Help us, and let's engage, because at the end of the day, they're also out there doing this extraordinary work day in and day out. I think that
I just think it's key to have a timeline on these things.
Exactly.
So that we can, mark, when we meet with you again, we can begin to mark progress and give significant updates on what we've been able to accomplish. I think that's key.
That would be great.
And,
I see Councilmember Rice. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying we have had the most interactivity with the Montgomery County Food Council, and that's been a great resource and something that I know Councilmember Rice and yourself really set us ahead of the game, is already having that in place.
Yeah, no, the infrastructure is there. That's the good news for us, for sure. Yeah. Councilmember Rice has been working on these issues on the national level as well, has joined us. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm just here to listen. I really just want to applaud you and the GO committee, as well as Ms. Roper, Ms. Herrera, who continue to push the county in making sure that equity and access is there when it comes to broadband for all of our residents. And so there are some recommendations that we are incorporating that have already utilized some of the great work that Montgomery County has done to share with the rest of the nation around what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And so I just continue to lift up the great work that under your leadership, Madam Chair, and under you, Ms. Roper, Ms. Herrera, Mr. Torregas, all of you guys have done some tremendous work. And so it really is great to highlight those examples for the rest of the nation to understand what it is that needs to be done. But even here, obviously, we know more work needs to be done. We still have so many people that remain connected at levels that are far below what we know is acceptable these days. And so we're working on national standards. We're working on better data acquisition so that we can ensure that we understand where exactly we need to focus our efforts. We're also looking at ways in which we can stand up local progress. So when local jurisdictions like Montgomery County, other cities that set up municipal broadband and others decide to do these things, there needs to be federal government support. And there needs to not be obstacles from some commercial partners. I won't say here in this area, but there are obstacles that are put in the way in some jurisdictions when it comes to ensuring that the service can be there. And just because a private provider may not be able to offer it at an affordable price does not mean that's our only solution. There are other ways in which localities can actually step up and do that. We've seen it in so many other ways, and this shouldn't be any different. And so lastly, I'll just close with this, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the deference of just allowing me to say something. Look, broadband should be treated as a utility. There is no question how it's necessary. It's necessary in education space, in healthcare. It's necessary in e-commerce. So from an economic development standpoint, and because this is so important to our future, then we know that to keep people disconnected from this, whether it's either based on the speeds or actual connectivity altogether, we're keeping them out of the future of this country, of this nation, of this world. And so from that perspective, we've got to change the paradigm. And so I look forward to working with each and every one of you over the next course of a year and some months to try and make that happen. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. You're absolutely right. I think that shifting the narrative is so critical. And we've been forced to do that during this pandemic. And I keep saying, I hope that we don't revert back to status quo. We need to make sure that we continue to amplify how the pandemic has shifted so many things. So you're right on point with that. So Ms. Dollar wanted to perhaps chime in about how the dollars are being utilized.
Heard that before.
I know. I was like, Ms. Dollar, is that right? I don't want to be inappropriate or anything, but no, it is Ms. Allison Dollar. But the question about how can we leverage these funds, and does this mean that we can then amplify what we're doing, or are these going to supplant some of the money, et cetera? If you can talk a little bit about the utilization of the funds.
Yeah. Well, as we receive funds, we'll most certainly work with OMB and council staff to look for opportunities to offset tax-supported budgeted items. I mean, that's basically all I can say at this moment. But I know that council staff and OMB is working now to identify areas for funding for the unallocated ARPA funds. So we are partnering with council and how we move forward with these funds.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if we could maybe, I think there was some reference to the public-private partnership piece, but I don't know, Ms. Roper, if you can just talk to us a little bit more about those particular efforts. And then I think we'll see if my colleagues have any other comments. If not, we obviously need to move to the other items as well, but I really wanted to hear a little bit more about the private-public partnerships piece.
So I would say that we have kind of branched out in terms of having conversations, even with some of our providers. As you know, Councilman Rice has done an excellent job of establishing the Apple, and I've become involved with that. But we have other vendors and other corporations in our region that we should be having these conversations with. One of those being, of course, Microsoft. And I mentioned that we would be meeting with them either it's later today or tomorrow to begin to talk about seeding some digital programs throughout the community that, kind of go to the children, make it accessible to students, have targeted programs for girls getting into coding, those kinds of things that I really have seen be highly effective in communities. So we're just looking, and as you interact with the public and corporations in your day-to-day, if you can send them our way, we're just always willing to sit down and figure out how we better our community through we cannot do it alone. We talked about, being able to utilize some of this funding to offset some of the programming. We have a very significant vision in mind, and it's probably more involved and more complex than ever. And all we were able to get funded was really seed money to start some of this. So, I think it was $500,000 for our initiative to begin to provide access to housing, to bring accessibility into the home, but it's just a very small amount, and the opportunities are there. We've sat down and met with a lot of the housing providers, and they want it. They're ready. We're trying to get in on some of the new developments that are being done, so we get on the front end and become a part of their branding as they come up. And then the older ones, we've got solutions for bringing access to the older facilities as well. But as you all know, construction is expensive, and that's what we're talking about here. But we are utilizing our assets as a county. This is all coming from FiberNet 3 and extending our assets to the community, which is what we need to do with it. And I also believe that there is even more opportunity over the next several years to do more public-private partnerships. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that as we speak about reframing this issue as an economic, sufficiency, economic development, and workforce development, all of those pieces, there's no doubt that I think there are opportunities also in connecting with, the Economic Development Corporation, with the Community Foundation, even with MCPS as they do their work with the MCPS Foundation. There are some organizations like the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. We did do a number of those coding as a second language events. They had a whole curriculum, which they did in schools like, Springbrook High School and also Wheaton High School, et cetera. And so I feel like that would be another really great opportunity, perhaps, even hosting, you guys hosting a meeting with some of the leaders of these different entities, just to see how we can all work together to do this. I'm sure my colleagues would appreciate that one of the things we always seem to have as a challenge is the perception of Montgomery County just being so wealthy that we never need to leverage any kind of private funds, but that's not the case. And perhaps coming together with these folks who are already working in those spaces would really help us, because it is, it's not a nice to have, right? It's real pivotal.
Exactly.
Yes.
I just wanted to raise one small piece that I do think that between the county executive and council, that there needs to be a policy discussion. And those are students who are not enrolled in MCPS. They're either in a private school or they are homeschooled. There is another bucket of money that is available to private schools. There isn't necessarily a funding mechanism for homeschool children. MCPS's policy right now is that they're supporting devices and internet connections to any student, regardless of income. And I think that we need to have some guidance that, and also we work with the county executive and the ACAO on that area for education. But we need some guidance about, is it going to be means tested? Is it going to target something? Is it open to anybody who's a student on that front? Similarly, and for Montgomery College, it's going to be Pell Grant recipients who are eligible for the EBB program, which is a big thing because Pell Grant recipients previously were not eligible for any low-cost internet program. But again, those are going to skew towards lower income. So what's our policy going to be for the non-MCPS students? I just would park that issue as something that others should have more weigh in, and we just need some policy direction.
Okay, well, I'm sure Dr. Torres can help us do a follow-up to clarify some of that.
I'm very happy to do so, Ms. Navarro. The focus on the home is going to be the door that opens this Pandora's box, because MCPS is obviously investing in the school system during school hours. But you, Ms. Navarro, and the rest of the GO committee 2-3 years ago focused on the home, saying that it's not just the school, but it's the home that's essential, because we have a homework gap and so on and so forth. So focusing on the home is going to be a very important topic. So I'll be happy to talk with my colleagues at Tibbs and create some kind of a policy discussion that GO and perhaps other committees can participate in.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other comments from my colleagues? No? I very much appreciate your time. I think that there's just so much energy around this, and I think so many areas that we can leverage to strengthen this, but always with this understanding of the reframing and changing the narrative, which seems to be like a thread that is common on so many other policy areas these days. So I look forward to hearing more in terms of where we're headed. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. We're going to move to item 2. This is the resolution to approve the tax-supported fiscal plan summary for the FY 22 and 27 Public Services Program. And Mr. Smith is here, who prepared the packet for us. I believe that we are expecting Mr. Mike Coveyu, who is the Director of the Department of Finance, Ms. Jennifer Bryan, the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Chris Mullen, Manager of Office Management and Budget, Nancy Feldman, Fiscal Management Chief Finance, and David Platt, he is our Chief Economist, and he's in the Department of Finance. So I am going to just turn it right over to Mr. Smith to begin to walk us through this particular exercise, which we, of course, do periodically to make sure that we are tracking all of our fiscal policies and that our budgeting has a blueprint that we can follow. And as we always say, it is a snapshot in time, but I think it's been extraordinarily useful for our fiscal planning here in Montgomery County. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro, and also want to thank our colleagues from OMB and Finance who work each year with council staff and the council to develop the fiscal plan summary. As you noted, it is a snapshot in time. The council, as required by charter, must approve a 6-year public services program, but also the council has set up through the county's policies and reaffirmed them this year to approve a balanced 6-year fiscal plan. And so, as noted by Ms. Navarro, this is a snapshot in time. So the June fiscal plan that we see today will be the fiscal plan based on the operating budget decisions and the amended CIP budget decisions the council just made a couple weeks ago. We will receive a couple updates, or I should say the council will receive a couple updates throughout the year on this fiscal plan. There will be another one in December, which will update revenues based on estimates from Department of Finance. And then we'll see another one in March of 2022 with the executive's recommended fiscal 23 operating budget, which will update the fiscal conditions and any of the revenues that have come in since then. So I won't spend a lot of time. I will say that the committee will make a recommendation today for the full council, as noted in the staff report, based on timing for committee meetings and council meetings in June. The resolution and fiscal plan summary will be introduced tomorrow. The council will act on the GO committee's recommendation next week on June 22nd. The fiscal plan has 3 main categories on Circle 3, the revenues and total revenues, non-operating budget, fiscal policy decisions such as debt service, PAYGO, reserves, and then obviously agency uses. And all 3 of these need to equal are the revenues, and then the other 2 need to equal each other as you go through the plan. Fiscal 22, I won't spend a lot of time on because the council spent a lot of time on that during the budget. But a particular note, council staff does want to highlight kind of where we're at as we go and looking forward to fiscal 23. So fiscal 22 and total revenues, both 21 and 22 were built a lot on the one-time federal aid that was provided to the county and many other jurisdictions due to COVID. Without that, the total growth in revenues would have looked very different. And so that kind of sets up this whole fiscal plan to have a similar revenue growth as we would see in previous fiscal plans. But again, minus the additional federal aid in 21 and 22, I think the growth curve would look very different. And this is also seen when we go to fiscal 23, when the total revenues are expected only to increase by 0.8%, as opposed to closer to 3.5% that's in future fiscal years in the plan. Because a lot of this one-time federal aid will be eliminated from the total revenues. Many of the fiscal policy decisions are in line with the county's fiscal policies. As noted during the process for fiscal 22, the only one that's different in this fiscal plan as approved by the council is that there's a 50% PAYGO reduction in 22. But for fiscal 23 through 27, the fiscal plan shows the 10% PAYGO policy throughout the fiscal plan. A particular note, and for the non-operating budget uses in 23, the current revenue for CIP is expected to increase by almost $28 million based on the approved amended fiscal 21 to 26 CIP. That's a pretty significant increase that would reduce resources available for agency use in 23 if other resources are not received during the year, or other decisions or similar decisions are made as the council considers the biennial CIP. And then the last factor I'll just talk about are reserves, which is on Circle 4. The county is expected to end fiscal 22 at 9.6%, as updated as affirmed in the updated fiscal policies that were approved earlier this year, the council can, or the county can go below 10% under certain economic and fiscal conditions as it was during the pandemic. And fortunately, we're only at 9.6% at the end of fiscal 22. Our policy goal is 10%, and the fiscal plan does achieve 10% within 3 fiscal years of dipping below the 10% mark. And so this fiscal plan does achieve that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the GEO chair and the committee if they have any questions for myself or my colleagues from executive staff. And then ultimately the committee should make a recommendation for the full council on this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I don't see any signs from my colleagues. I think that obviously we've already pretty much discussed all of this and made it, taken the actions, etc. So unless anybody from the administration, finance or OMB has any further comments, I don't see anybody waving or anything. All right, so is there a motion to recommend this?
So move.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Without objection, we will recommend this resolution. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so now we will move over to, let me find out my packet here. Item number 3, which is expedited bill 12-21, personnel, employees retirement system, retirement savings plan group trust amendments. And I see Mr. Drummer, who has prepared this packet for us. I also see Ms. Herman. Welcome, Mr. Nathan, Ms. Yan. Welcome to today's GEO committee. All right, so I'm just going to turn it right over to Mr. Drummer, who will walk us through this particular bill, which I understand we need to act on because then we would be aligned with some of the changes at the federal level. And so that is why we are here. So let me turn it over to you, Mr. Drummer.
Morning. That is correct. That most of the changes, although not all of them in this bill, are to align our retirement plans with the recent changes in the Internal Revenue Code. The changes are generally the mandatory required distribution for IRAs and deferred comp and certain other types of tax deferred plans was changed from 70.5 to 72. So this bill would make that change. It changes the timing of distributions of certain types of benefits for certain beneficiaries. The biggest changes are distributions of death benefits to beneficiaries, which is coordinated with the federal law. There's also a change for 2020. The federal government, due to the pandemic, allowed a year with no required mandatory distributions. The retirement plans followed that, but this needs to be codified in the law. It's actually something for last year. Required minimum distributions come back in 2021. It clarifies the process for money that distributions where you can't find a participant that ultimately end up going to the state, and it clarifies some operations of the group trust and ultimately makes some technical changes that would permit the retirement system to provide a new investment vehicle for the RSP and I believe the GRIP as well, to allow the retirement plan to create sub-trusts where and it would be a voluntary benefit that the participant could then choose to, I guess, ride with the retirement plan, essentially. Whatever the retirement plan, the global trust does would be what you would get. The increases are hopefully not decreases. which would allow you to, and the retirement plan over the past number of years has done rather well. And it has a good allocation, distribution of different types of investments that protect against downturns. So that would be, this doesn't create that investment vehicle. The Board of Investment Trustees would still have to create it, but this would create the authority for them to do it. I believe that's pretty much covers the bill. I guess Ms. Herman may want to add what I've forgotten in the bill, and they're obviously here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer. Welcome, Ms. Herman. Anything you'd like to add?
No, Bob encapsulated everything very well. Just one other thing, we also are amending of funds.
Oh, we're having problems hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? No. Sorry. Bob encapsulated everything in the bill.
Okay, thank you. You were just going in and out a little bit, but we did hear what you said. Bob did a good job, as always.
I was gonna say, Bob certainly heard that part.
He did. He's nodding confused.
I heard that part.
All right.
Yeah.
Any questions from my colleagues? In particular, anything? All right. Anybody like to move this bill?
I move the bill.
All right, moved by Councilmember Katz, second by Councilmember Friedson. Without objection, we will adopt this bill as introduced. Okay, so now we're all aligned with the federal government. All right, thank you so much. Okay, colleagues, I believe that wraps up our 3 items of the day. I really appreciate everybody's time and hope everybody stays safe. We're adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
For today on serving